Most companies I work with already have ideas for AI use cases. It could be contract analysis, it could be an AI copilot, but the hard part is actually turning this idea into something actionable that your teams can develop. And this is where use case scoping comes in. And obviously the teams that skip this are going to be wondering why their projects aren't working 3 months later. So in this video, let's actually break down how to scope AI use cases, and let's start with process decomposition. So your use case may just be a vague idea. As an example, a company may just want to have AI process invoices. But how do we actually take this idea and fully execute on it? Process decomposition helps us break down these larger tasks into small subcomponents. And you probably already know the high-level process for the business tasks, but we need to go 1 or 2 levels deeper to ensure requirements for our AI solution. So in our invoice example, the high-level tasks might just be receiving an invoice, then extracting information from that invoice, getting approval for the payment, and then finally processing that payment fully. But again, we need to go 1 or 2 levels deeper here. And as you can see, each step is going to have multiple subtasks and multiple subcomponents for each. Now, how does this actually help us? Well, once we have a detailed map, we can get really granular on the inputs, outputs, and requirements for AI solution. So you'll want to look at inputs, which is fields, forms, text, or any sort of data sources that are used in the process. Second is outputs, so what does each step or task produce at each part? We'll also know the constraints at each level of the process as well. So is it a manual process already? Is it automated? Does it require a lot of intelligence? Maybe there's some compliance issues there. And knowing those constraints are important for our AI. Next is resources. So who currently does this task today? What are the numbers of employees performing this task? And how long does each step in this process take? And then finally, this is slightly more on the technical side, but are there any security or infrastructure requirements that we need to look at? This could be any compliance regulations that force us to go on-premise, for instance, for our deployment. And breaking down the process and asking these questions will help us get technical requirements early. So now that we have a detailed process mapped with key information, obviously, our end goal is to change this process with AI. So next, we got to move into solution design. Now, there are multiple ways that you can implement an AI use case. And once a solution is mapped, you essentially have 2 different options, or both depending on how you want to do it. First is workflow optimization. And this is where you typically keep the structure the same, you just reduce the manual labor required. This is typically where you optimize individual processes or steps directly. And this is where you speed up those processes to improve the overarching speed. So in the invoice example, let's just take one of the tasks and try to optimize it. So here, instead of manually downloading an invoice and then inputting into the ERP system, you can have the AI extract that invoice data, pre-fill the ERP fields, and do others like suggest GL codes and match POs automatically. But the human is still actually doing the action and approving the process. But as you can see, the structure is not changing here. We are just using AI to immediately reduce the time for each individual subcomponent and subtask. Now, the second option here is workflow redesign. And this is where you actually change the full structure of the process entirely. And I've done dozens of AI projects for some of the world's largest companies. And when you do redesign, it's typically shifting human labor away from directly executing tasks to now overseeing AI doing those tasks. And these are typically AI agent use cases, multi-agent use cases, or even some complex workflows. But the big thing is now, instead of humans doing direct execution, it is oversight. So in our invoice example, instead of reviewing every single invoice that comes in, the AI is going to do that for you. And the AI with the invoices that has high confidence for can approve them directly or auto-approve them. And then if it doesn't know, it sends those to humans for edge cases. But let's take a step back here. Full automation here, as you can see, can have severe consequences. In our invoice example, if an AI agent approves something that it shouldn't have, then the CFO is going to be knocking on your door. And so this is where we have to get into levels of autonomy. Now, typically, the lower the AI autonomy level, the more you're working towards optimization. And the higher you go, typically the more you're redesigning. But let's walk through these levels at a high level so you understand how it's working. The first level is the AI assistive. So here the AI is going to work side by side with employees, but obviously they are still going to be the one who's owning and driving the full execution. So think of an AI copilot getting information from a database that you're going to search for or drafting a summary for you. As the employees are working, it's just helping them out to actually execute. Now, level 2 is supervised execution. And this is not where the AI performs the workflow, right? And workers just review the final output. Here, the AI processes it and then the human approves it. And obviously, this is where you start having detailed audit logs involved. Now, I'm just going to say that most of the successful deployments at this current stage live in this layer. And there's actually very few companies that are going heavily towards fully autonomous. And especially in regulated industries or mission critical tasks, this is really where you want to land on for the majority of your deployments. Now, level 3 is exception-based autonomy. Now, workers don't actually need to get involved in this stage. It's typically more of escalating to them if needed, or if something goes wrong. And as you can see, it's higher leverage, but there's way more risk. And now workers are just monitoring, right? They're not even managing directly. And this requires very mature AI and data. And obviously starting out, you should do this on low criticality tasks. Now, as a rule of thumb, the more mission critical the task is, the lower you want your autonomy level to start with first. And then over time, you should be building and building to have more and more autonomy. Now, once you decide on your optimization, your redesign, or both, and you've also identified your level of autonomy, now we look into your deployment architecture. Now, I'm just going to be completely honest with you. If you are running AI projects inside of a large company, you're going to need to know the technical architecture. But I have some good news here on how to start this process easily. Now, for each one of these autonomy levels, there's actually a predefined architecture that you can really just start with as your baseline. And honestly, most of these enterprise use cases do actually fall in one of these categories. So let's just say this is your first AI use case. Maybe you do work in a regulated industry, so let's just start with the level 1 autonomy. We have a couple of tasks. Let's just use a general assistant to just speed up these tasks with execution. So deployment patterns are something like copilots. You've definitely heard of Microsoft Copilot at this point. Or you could build your own using an AI agent that does a search and retrieval aspect, or a retrieval augmented generation, which helps pull in company data to actually answer your questions. And we can put this assistant in to help you optimize whichever part of your sub-process you're looking at. But as you can see here, once you know what the workflow is, what your autonomy level is, and then the high-level pain points of the process, you can start already having solution design conversations. So now that we know that we're building, let's move into the last step, which is actually identifying the initial scope for your project. As I mentioned, we don't want to boil the ocean, and that also means not rolling out this copilot to every department across the whole company instantaneously. We need to find key parameters to start. Now, it is going to be different based off of your use case, but here's some general ones. A document type or the amount of volume that you have. Maybe there's a department, a facility, or a user group or an end user that you're thinking of. And lastly, maybe you're looking for capabilities initially, and also data sources that you want the AI to access to could also be a good starting point. But it's important here to define explicitly what is outside of scope, because that's what makes this project realistic, and we can start building timelines and stuff going forward in future videos. So in our invoice example, we may just want to start rolling it out to 1 or 2 teams. And also, since we don't really know what the accuracy is yet, let's just do it on a low volume of invoices. Then over time, once we have more confidence that the accuracy is good, we can increase the volume and then scale it out to other teams. So once you've mapped the workflow, identified the autonomy levels, and have the high-level solution architecture, as well as the initial scope for your first project, you can finally start executing. In a future video, I'm going to show you how to technically execute on a lot of these initial AI projects. And the 0 to 1 initial project is actually way different than your 1 to 100 scale out. And believe it or not, it does require technical skills, but it's not as detailed as you would expect. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.